Everyone, welcome to this assembly commemorating the life of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. Rabbi Sacks was young in the state of Israel when he passed away this Shabbat. He was born in 1948 to a family of wine merchants and attended a non-Jewish school. Upon graduating, he went to study at Cambridge, one of the world's most respected universities. Young Sacks had three possible career paths ahead of him: in philosophy, in law, or in the rabbinate. After a meeting with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Jonathan Sacks was encouraged to get smicha and become a rabbi, as he did. His rabbinic positions grew in rank, and in time, Sacks was elected as the principal of Jews College, a center that was responsible for training rabbis to take on posts in England and abroad. In 1991, when Sacks was 43 years old, he was elected as the chief rabbi of the British Commonwealth, a post he held for 22 years. In this time, Rabbi Sacks built a following of Jews and non-Jews alike, who drew inspiration and insight from his tremendous depth of knowledge, his incredible oratory, and unusual appetite for learning. He was knighted by the Queen and was granted a seat in the House of Lords in the UK, was bestowed with 16 honorary degrees and authored 25 books, his most recent of which is entitled Morality, and it was published this year. After concluding his post as chief rabbi, Sacks continued his great work. The weekly Devaratari he published whilst chief rabbi, Covenant and Conversations, continued to be doled out to his enthusiastic followers. He traveled to the USA and became a visiting professor at Yeshiva University, inspiring those who lived beyond the Commonwealth and establishing himself as a truly international Torah leader.
Rabbi Sacks' work is of utmost importance to every one of our lives. Rabbi Sacks spoke Judaism in the language of the 21st century. He took our age-old tradition and made it modern without compromising its authenticity. There is no question, there was no issue that was not intellectually fair game for Rabbi Sacks. He wrote prolifically and about everything. He tackled the questions of Torah and science, of religion and secularism, of psychology and chassidut, and he cared deeply about people our age, about students. At the end of today's tribute, there will be an opportunity for you to personally engage with Rabbi Sacks' teaching, for you to absorb some of his most profound thoughts, and perhaps to watch a video made for students, encourage them to be more Jewish at a time when 2/3 of our Jewish children are choosing to become less so, explaining why he chose to be more Jewish when he was our age. Your learning about this amazing man doesn't need to end here. Go to rabbisacks.org next time you have a moment and read, watch, and listen. He has changed tens of thousands of lives. Yehi Zichro Baruch. May the memory of Rabbi Sacks be for a blessing. And now I would like to call up the vice captains to read out the Tehillim.
מזמור לרבי אדוני רואי לא אחסר. בינות דשא ירביצני אל מי מנוחה ינעלני. נפשי יושבת ינחני במעגלי צדק במען שמו.
גם כי אלך בגיא צל המוות, לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. דשנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני, כל ימי חיי, ישבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
שיר המעלות ממעמקים קראתיך. אדוני שמע בקולי, תהיינה אזניך קשובות. אם עונות תשמע יא אדוני מי יעמוד, כי יומך הסליחה למען תברך.
קיוויתי אדוני קיוותה נפשי ולדברו הוחלתי. נפשי לאדוני משומרים לבוקר, שומרים לבוקר.
יחל ישראל אל אדוני, כי עם אדוני החסד והרבה עמו פדות, והוא יפדה את ישראל מכל עוונותיו.
Why I am a Jew. The deepest question any of us can ask is, who am I? To answer it, we have to go deeper than where do I live or what do I do. The most fateful moment in my life came when I asked myself that question and knew the answer had to be, I am a Jew. This is why. I'm a Jew not because I believe that Judaism contains all there is of the human story. I admire other traditions and their contributions to the world. Nor am I a Jew because of anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism. What happens to me does not define who I am. Ours is a people of faith, not fate. Nor is it because I think that Jews are better than others, more intelligent, creative, generous, or successful. It's not Jews who are different, but Judaism. It's not so much what we are, but what we're called on to be. I'm a Jew because, being a child of my people, I have heard the call to add my chapter to its unfinished story. I'm a stage on its journey, a connecting link between the generations. The dreams and hopes of my ancestors live on in me, and I am the guardian of their trust, now and for the future. I'm a Jew because our ancestors were the first to see that the world is driven by a moral purpose, that reality isn't a ceaseless war of the elements to be worshipped as gods, nor history a battle in which might is right and power is to be appeased. The Judaic tradition shaped the moral civilization of the West, teaching for the first time that human life is sacred, that the individual may never be sacrificed for the mass, and that rich and poor, great and small, are all equal before God. I'm a Jew because I am the moral heir of those who stood at the foot of Mount Sinai and pledged themselves to live by these truths for all time. I'm the descendant of countless generations of ancestors who, though sorely tested and bitterly tried, remained faithful to that covenant when they might so easily have defected. I'm a Jew because of Shabbat, the world's greatest religious institution, a time in which there's no manipulation of nature or our fellow human beings, in which we come together in freedom and equality to create every week an anticipation of the Messianic age. I'm a Jew because our nation, though at times it suffered the deepest poverty, never gave up on its commitment to helping the poor or rescuing Jews from other lands or fighting for justice for the oppressed, and did so without self-congratulation, because it was a mitzvah, because a Jew could do no less. I'm a Jew because I cherish the Torah, knowing that God is to be found not just in natural forces, but in moral meanings, in words, texts, teachings, and commands, and because Jews, though they lacked all else, never ceased to value education as a sacred task, endowing the individual with dignity and depth. I'm a Jew because of our people's passionate faith in freedom, holding that each of us is a moral agent, and that in this lies our unique dignity as human beings. And because Judaism never left its ideals at the level of lofty aspirations, but instead translated them into deeds which we call mitzvot, and a way which we call the halacha, and thus brought heaven down to earth. I am proud, simply, to be a Jew. I'm proud to be part of a people who, though scarred and traumatized, never lost their humor or their faith, their ability to laugh at present troubles and still believe in ultimate redemption, who saw human history as a journey and never stopped traveling and searching. I'm proud to be part of an age in which my people, ravaged by the worst crime ever to be committed against a people, responded by reviving a land, recovering their sovereignty, rescuing threatened Jews throughout the world, rebuilding Jerusalem, and proving themselves courageous in the pursuit of peace, no less than in defending themselves in war. I'm proud that our ancestors refused to be satisfied with premature consolations, and in answer to the question, has the Messiah come, always answered, not yet. I'm proud to belong to the people Israel, whose name means one who wrestles with God and with man and prevails. For though we have loved humanity, we have never stopped wrestling with it, challenging the idols of every age. And though we have loved God with an everlasting love, we've never stopped wrestling with him, nor he with us. I admire other civilizations and traditions, and believe each has brought something special into the world. Aval zeh shalanu. But this is ours. This is my people, my heritage, my faith. In our uniqueness lies our universality. Through being what we alone are, we give to humanity what only we can give. This then is our story, our gift to the next generation. I received it from my parents and they from theirs, across great expanses of space and time. There's nothing quite like it. It changed and still challenges the moral imagination of humankind. I want to say to Jews around the world, take it, cherish it, learn to understand and to love it. Carry it, and it will carry you. And may you, in turn, pass it on to future generations. For you are a member of an eternal people, a letter in their scroll. Let their eternity live on in you.
I was in shock when I woke up on Sunday morning to the news that one of my most brilliant teachers, a man who I learnt so much from and a man who I continue to learn from, had passed away at the age of 72. The last time I saw Rabbi Sacks, I saw him on videos, I saw his writing, I heard him in his audio, was only a few months earlier, and he was fully strong. And he was at the peak. He was writing a book a year. My wife had just finished his book Morality, which Ellie and Yossi mentioned, and it's the next book I have to read. And for a moment, not for a moment, did I think that Rabbi Sacks would be taken from us. Such a young man. And I want to share with you, my fellow Yavnerians, who Rabbi Sacks was to me. And as I'm going to mention a little bit later, there's going to be a number of us who are going to be sharing over the coming lunchtimes what Rabbi Sacks meant to all of us, because he meant so many things to so many people. Rabbi Sacks, to me, answered the very, very difficult question of what does it mean to be modern Orthodox? There are some people who think that modern Orthodox means to be diluted Orthodox. It means to be Orthodox, but to not take it as seriously. There are other people who think modern Orthodox is to study general studies and take general studies seriously. Rabbi Sacks taught me that modern Orthodoxy is to bring together the world of the general studies together with Torah, to bring them into conversation and to show how much Torah enriches general studies and how much general studies enriches Torah. Rabbi Sacks was a man of phenomenal mind and phenomenal heart. He was an expert in philosophy, in psychology, in literature, in science, and in politics. And he brought everything together with his Torah learning. Rabbi Sacks was also an amazing joker. And I want to share with you one of my favorite jokes of Jonathan Sacks. I might even share two. The first one, and they're both very deep jokes. The first joke was about two Oxford dons, two leaders of different houses at Oxford. And they didn't like each other very much. And they were debating in a public debate. And one of them got up and he said about his fellow, he said, "My dear sir, on the surface, you are profound, but deep down, you are superficial." Now, if you got that, it means you'll get half of what Rabbi Sacks is. He's a man who even his jokes are profound. And I'm going to share another one of his jokes. It's a mathematical one. He talks about a teacher who was once taking a maths class, and it was for year 8, and they were teaching their year 8 students about two negatives. When you multiply them, they equal a positive. And he said, whenever you have two positives, that'll make a positive. Whenever you have two negatives, it also makes a positive. Two negatives never make a negative. And one of the students raised his hand and the teacher said, "Yes, Jimmy." And Jimmy said to him, "Yeah." Now, I don't know if you got that, but again, it's a Rabbi Sacks style joke. Every joke you've got to think about, and everything he said was deep and had layers upon layers of meaning. Rabbi Sacks was one of my teachers who I was so influenced by that I can hardly distinguish between my worldview and his. That the way I think is just in line with Rabbi Sacks. I remember when I was back in 2008, I came across Rabbi Sacks's writings, his Covenant and Conversation. And I just read and read and read and read. I was such a groupie of Rabbi Sacks that when I first got Facebook, and it would have been somewhere around 2010 or 8 or 9, Facebook was just emerging. Someone can fact check me on the exact date. But Jonathan Sacks was my first Facebook profile picture. Yes, I was that geek. Now, I want to share with you a personal encounter that I had with Rabbi Sacks. And this was just a few years ago. As a matter of fact, Shmuley Motti and Akiva Cohen, who are watching this with us, their family donated a Torah just a number of years ago. And Rabbi Sacks came down to Melbourne especially for this donation of this Torah. And there was a special trip that he had on a boat, and I was invited to join that trip. And I got to spend some time with him and his wife, Elaine. And at the time, I was the rabbi of the Elsternwick Jewish community. And I was interested in studying philosophy. And I turned to Rabbi Sacks and I said, Rabbi Sacks, do you recommend that I study philosophy? And Rabbi Sacks turned to me and he said to me, I don't recommend you study philosophy. Instead, I recommend you make a course and you teach philosophy. He said, the best way you will learn something is through teaching it. And that message has stuck with me ever since. And it gives me passion as a teacher. And it taught me the most important message of life, which is that if you really want to understand something thoroughly, you've got to teach it. You've got to make it yours. And I think that's what he also lived by as an educator, is that he taught, and that's the way he learned. I want to share another story about Rabbi Sacks. And that is when Rabbi Sacks was a student in Cambridge, it wasn't so comfortable for him to walk around with a kippah. And it was a little bit embarrassing for him to walk around the streets of Cambridge, wearing a kippah. And so he would keep it on because he was proud. But there was one time that he was running through the Oval and he took off his kippah as he was running, and he held it under his arm. You've probably seen maybe one or two students at Yavna, maybe during a sports match, they've taken off their kippah while they've been running. And later that day, one of Rabbi Sacks's professors called him over and he said to him, Rabbi Sacks, well, he wasn't Rabbi Sacks then, he was Jonathan. He said, Jonathan, I noticed today that you took off your kippah. And Rabbi Sacks said, yes, I took it off because I was running and I didn't want it to fall off in the wind. And the professor said, I'm relieved. I was worried that you were taking off your kippah because you were embarrassed to be proudly religious. I want you to know, as a non-Jewish man, I think it's important to have people like you. I think our world needs people who stand up for something, who stand up for the values of Judaism. And Rabbi Sacks learned from that message something which he's repeated so many times. He learned from that non-Jews respect Jews who respect Judaism. And to me, that is a very, very important and profound idea. A lot of people struggle with the fact that they don't fit in. They want to fit into our world, and they think that the way to fit in is to somehow deny who we are, to pretend we're something else. What Rabbi Sacks taught us is that the best way of fitting in, the best way of being comfortable in your skin, the best way of gaining the respect and admiration of others is by being true to yourself as a Jewish person. And I want to conclude with a phrase that Rabbi Sacks always had as his byline when he was the chief rabbi. And I'm going to share the screen with you because I actually want you to see this text inside. So bear with me while I share my screen. Here we go. While I'm sharing, I will tell you what it is. The phrase goes like this: Lo yalecha hamalacha ligmar, v'lo yata ben chorin libatal mimena. And what that means is that it's not up to you to finish the work, but that doesn't give you an excuse not to do it. Now, this is a very profound idea because a lot of people realize that the mission we have as Jewish people is a massive one. And they figure that, you know what, we can't finish this job. Rabbi Sacks taught us that even if you can't finish it, every step that you put in, every little bit that you give is powerful. And Rabbi Sacks lived this way because he did not finish his work. Rabbi Sacks is still in the middle of his job. He was 72. He had so many more books to write, so many more articles to write, so many more speeches to give, so many more people to inspire. But that didn't stop him from giving it his everything. And I thought that in honor of Rabbi Sacks, we'll finish off learning this Mishnah in his merit, because we know that Mishnah and Neshama, the soul, is something which is elevated through the learning of Mishnayot. So you can say this along with me under your breath. Hu haya omer, Rabbi Tarfon used to say, Lo alecha hamalacha ligmar. It's not up to us to finish the job. V'lo yata ben chorin libatel mimena, but that does not give us an excuse not to give it everything we've got. Im lamadata Torah harbe, if you learn a lot of Torah, notnim lecha schar harbe, Hashem gives you an immense reward. V'neman hu bal melachtecha, sheyeshalom lecha schar pulatecha. And Hashem, who is our boss, is a trusted boss, and he is going to pay us back for the work that we do. V'da, and we should all know, matan scharan shel tzadikim la'atid lavo, that the ultimate reward of the righteous comes when Mashiach comes. And that means that ultimately, when Mashiach comes, or when a neshama goes to Gan Eden, it could also be la'atid lavo, that means the neshama goes to Gan Eden, that's when a tzaddik gets its full reward. And we know that Jonathan Sacks, who's a man who, to me, seems like a tzaddik, I don't know, but he seems like a tzaddik to me. There's no doubt that he's in Gan Eden now, receiving the reward for the amazing influence that he had in perfecting and impacting this world. So I'm going to now show you just a quick video, which in this video, this is at the time when Rabbi Sacks, this was during coronavirus. You can see he's on Zoom talking from home, and he speaks about a very powerful idea. And I think it could have been that maybe at this time he was already aware of his diagnosis. He speaks from the heart. It's only 1 minute, and it made a tremendous impact on me, and I think it might do the same for you.
You just did. I started off telling you about my parents, and it just comes to mind. I remember my father said to us that the last time he saw you, you remembered my mother had asked you a question, why do bad things happen to good people? And you said to my father, tell your wife, I still don't have an answer for her. I was wondering if you had any more insight.
Yes, I do, actually.
Oh.
God does not want us to understand why bad things happen to good people. Because if we ever understood, we would be forced to accept that bad things happen to good people. And God does not want us to accept those bad things. He wants us not to understand so that we will fight against the bad and the injustices of this world. And that is why there is no answer to that question, because God has arranged that we shall never have an answer to it.
Please now be upstanding for the Kel Malei Rachamim Tefillah. Rav Noam, I'm just going to get the Tefillah up on the screen. Here we go.
אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים טהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת יעקב צבי בן דוד אריה שהלך לעולמו, בעבור שנדבו צדקה בעד הזכרת נשמתו, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו, לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
Amen. Before I turn over to Tamara, who's going to introduce the next activity, over the coming lunchtimes, including today, we're running a number of sessions by staff who are going to be talking about what I learned from Rabbi Sacks. Today we had Hannah Dodge, who ran it at lunchtime. On Tuesday at 1:30, Yafa will be speaking on what I learned from Rabbi Sacks. On Thursday, Rav Noam at 1:30, and Friday it'll be Rav Marcus in the second half of lunchtime. So look out for it on Hayom in your Compass newsfeed. There'll also be chocolate milk for the body and Rabbi Sacks's Torah for the soul. So I'll now hand you over to Tamara.
Thank you. So firstly, Year 5 and 6 are now dismissed. For secondary students, when we were trying to plan an activity for today, we were asking ourselves, what could we do in order to give you the opportunity, give all students an opportunity to find personal meaning and relevance and individual connection to the teachings of Rabbi Sacks. And I think something that has come up with each segment of this assembly is Rabbi Sacks' unparalleled way with words and phrases and jokes, and every sentence he strung together was laden with infinite meanings. And we just wanted to give you the opportunity to find even a glimpse of that meaning and personal connection with his teachings, because what makes them so accessible to everyone, to each and every one of us, is his unparalleled ability to convey incisive and insightful ideas with such few words. So you now have the opportunity to go to the rabbisacks.org website. Your teachers will give you the link where you will go to a page of all his quotes, and you can choose from a range of topics from A to Z. We encourage you to find a topic that is maybe something you are looking for guidance, direction, meaning in your own life, to choose a topic that speaks to you, and then choose a quote that you think you connect with and you find meaningful and relevant. And your teachers will then give you a link to a form, and you will fill in a bit about why you chose that quote, why it's meaningful to you, and how you're going to adopt that teaching into your own life and make it practical to continue on his legacy. So I think with that, we are concluding today's